Hello, this is PTG ma'am, and in today's video I will be giving you certain tips and advice on how you can score really well in your BST examination. You are having your BST class 12 BST board exam tomorrow. So first of all the very best for that. I'm sure all of you are prepared and you will be cracking your exams really well. So you need not listen to this video also if you feel you are totally prepared. But just for an extra advice, if you feel you would like to watch this, then please go ahead. I'm sure this video will be quite useful. First of all, by now you know how the system works, right? So you are given your answer scripts by 10 a.m. or exactly at 10 a.m. You are given your question paper at 10:15 a.m. and then 15 minutes you have your reading time, and your exam starts exactly at 10:30 and which ends at 1:30 p.m. That means it's a 3-hour paper, and the maximum marks that you can score is 80. 20 already has been done, taken care of, which was your practical. Okay, so this I'm sure all of you know, there's no confusion about it. Now what you can do to maximize your chances of getting, more marks. The first thing is, when you have this 15 minutes crucial time, which is known as the reading time, please utilize that properly. Okay, if you go through this entire paper carefully for those 15 minutes, I'm sure you will get a good grip about the question paper, and you will know exactly what are the questions you are absolutely confident about and which one would take a little bit of your time, and you can keep it aside for the time being and just finish off with the ones that you're very confident of. Okay, so don't waste the reading time that is given to you. What I have observed students doing is, when they get this reading time, they become a little too engrossed in just seeing who is sitting where. Do I have my friends around me for moral support? I'm not going into the detail of it. Then what is my set, what is their set? So see, these things are very funny and stupid. Okay, you are simply losing out your marks if you're concentrating on these petty things. What you should do in that 15 minutes is, you have your question paper, you know your set, and that should be the only concern, not what your friend has got. So entirely concentrate on your paper, go through each question carefully and keep your cool, because sometimes your questions are pretty tricky. What you feel the answer is actually not the answer, and you get the answer only when you have read the question properly and you have read between the lines also. So the first tip is, utilize your 15 minutes of reading time to the maximum extent possible. Second thing, do not use black ink. Avoid using black ink even for writing the headings. Okay, use blue ink only. This will not help you in getting more marks or less marks, but then this is what you're supposed to do. So I just thought of adding this to you. Now coming to your question paper, your question paper will have 34 questions, and it will be divided into 4 or 5 sections. Okay, there will be some questions carrying 1 mark, there will be some questions carrying 3 marks, there will be questions carrying 4 marks, and there will be questions carrying 6 marks. That means there are 4 different sections there. The 1 mark questions are usually the MCQ ones. You can also have true and false, you can also have fill in the blanks, you will have or you can have match the column. But nowadays match the column is also in MCQ format and not draw the lines and match the columns. So when you're given the match the column kind of MCQs, please go through the options very carefully. Don't make a mistake there. Okay, match it first, think about it in your head, use your brain, and then match it with the options. So do the MCQ part smoothly. Keep your cool, don't hurry, but at the same time don't take too much of time in finishing off your MCQs. Second tip is go serially. There is no negative mark for not writing your questions in a haphazard, not writing your questions in a serial order, or if you're writing in a haphazard manner, it's not that your marks get deducted, but it creates, to an extent, not a very good impression about you. So, and it's difficult for you also, because you might also miss out on questions if you're not serially answering them. So it's always better to go serially, that is, starting with question number 1 and ending with question number 34, or whatever might be the last question in your question paper. Go serially. If there are questions about which you are not confident, or at that moment you're not being able to think about the answer, leave space for that, come back to it later, but do it serially. It will save your time also. When you're doing one after the other in a sequence, that actually gives you more time, rather than doing it in a haphazard manner, getting confused, missing out on questions, creating a negative impact on the person who will be checking your paper. So that is tip number 2. Third tip is there might be word limits mentioned. Again, it doesn't mean if word limits are mentioned and you are exceeding word limits, there will be negative marking. Cbse board is very student friendly board, and therefore till now there isn't any negative marking. So the question of getting less marks because you have written more is not there. That fear is not there. But why this word limit is mentioned? Because if you're writing more than what is required, you don't get more marks, right? If it's a 3 marks question and suppose the word limit is 75 and you're writing 200 words for a 3 marks question, then you are unnecessarily losing out your time, due to which you might not be able to finish your paper. So time management is a big thing. Okay, it's an 80 marks paper, it's a theory paper, so it's bound to be a little lengthy. Not always, but it can be. So there, if you cannot manage your time properly, then you will only have problem. So do not get into the idea that if I'm writing more, I'm getting more marks. No. Writing more or less is not the criteria. What you're writing is the main thing. Your content is what that will matter. So don't write extra. Don't write anything that is not required. You will not be marked for that. Next tip, always give keywords and explanation. Even if the question is saying state. Okay, usually when it says state, what comes to our mind is we will not elaborate. Okay, but even if it's written as state, suppose state 3 characteristics of something, always give the keyword, that is the main heading, and then explain that. Now if you don't feel like explaining it in an elaborate manner, that's fine. You keep the explanations short and simple, but make sure that your answer has 2 key elements. One is the keyword and the other one is the explanation for it. Because in many of the questions there is separate marks given for the keyword and separate marks given for the explanation part. So you might lose out your marks if you are not maintaining this. Next is, if you feel their diagrams can be incorporated in your question, add those diagrams. Presentation do matter. I'm not saying unnecessarily put diagram where it is not required, but in places where you can put diagrams, incorporate the diagrams, like in scalar chain, in gang plan, in functional foremanship, in levels of management. There are diagrams. You have seen these diagrams in your textbook also. So if possible, add the diagrams. It will make your presentation better and it will give you higher chances of scoring more. There are no, all questions are compulsory. Okay, so do not leave any question. Attempt all questions. First attempt the ones you are very confident about, but for that, go serially, leave out space for the ones you are not very confident, come back to it later. Okay, so attempt all the questions, but do not break the parts. Sometimes what students do is, suppose question number 3, suppose I'm just saying 3 will not have something like this. Let's go for question number 21. Suppose your question number 21 has 2 parts, A and B. So what you did is you have answered question number 21A somewhere, and then suddenly you remember that, oh, 21 had B also. So again, after so many pages, you are again writing 21B. Avoid these things, okay? Don't break up questions, don't answer in parts in different places. When you start a question, finish it. If you want to leave space for that, come back to it later. But do not jumble things, do not mix up parts, do not answer one part in one section and part of that question in another sections. Don't do these things, okay? Next, what else do we have? Oh yes, I have written down some of the points. That is what I was seeing. So as I was talking about options, there will be internal choice in some of the questions. Okay? Like maybe in question number, when you have questions which carry 3 marks or 4 marks or 6 marks, there 1 or 2 questions will have either or. Okay? Either this or that. So read the question carefully. Choose the question which you feel you can score better. I'm talking about questions which are having options, this or that. So read both the questions and choose that, okay, I will be going for this particular option because I'm more confident in this. So these things you can do well when you have utilized your 15 minutes of reading time very properly, because these decision making should not happen once you have started answering your paper. All these decision making things, that ये करना है, ये नहीं करना है, ये पहले करना है, वो बाद में करना है, इसे फ़िलहाल नहीं करेंगे, इसे आखिर में आके करेंगे, या फिर इसके साथ मुझे डायग्राम देना है, इसके साथ मुझे कीवर्ड्स ऐड करना है, ये सब जो डिसीजंस है ना, ये आपको पहले से सोच के रखना है. इफ़ यू आर ट्राइंग टू डू दीज थिंग्स वाइल यू आर आंसरिंग योर पेपर, then again you might miss out on some of the important points, and that way you might lose out your marks. Okay, so there is nothing to worry, there is nothing to be nervous about. If you have been serious, consistent with your studies throughout your year, you are bound to score well. Okay, if you know your subject, if you know the questions, I mean you will not be knowing what questions are coming, but if you know the chapters, then no matter how the questions are framed, you can always answer it. So don't take the stress. I'm sure nobody is stressed nowadays. Students are not stressed like the way we used to be, which is very good, but still some of you are, so there's nothing to worry. Everything will be fine. Today is the last day you're preparing for your BST, so don't take too much of pressure. Take a few minutes of break in between when you're studying. Relax a bit, listen to some songs if you feel like. Come back to the chapters which are very, very important. Marketing chapter is important, planning is important, principles of management is important, first chapter is important, environment chapter, consumer protection has a lot of questions, and it's a very easy chapter. Okay, a little bit of numericals can also be there when we talk about ROI and ROE, all those things, earning per share, EPS and all. So these things are there. So this is actually a revision period. So don't take the stress or tension or anything. Everything will be fine. I'm sure you all will do well, and let me know how you did your paper. How was the paper? Okay, so all the best. Take care.